Did you know that one of the scariest movies ever made was created without any computer special effects? That's right. Back in 1958, filmmakers didn't have computers, CGI, or fancy technology. Yet they made something so terrifying that people still talk about it today. The Fly is one of those movies that stays with you. It's not just about monsters, it's about a scientist who makes one terrible mistake. And that mistake changes everything. The story is simple but powerful. A man experiments with a machine. Something goes very, very wrong. And the world he knew disappears forever. This movie teaches us that some curiosity comes with a dangerous price. Today, we're uncovering 20 weird and amazing facts about The Fly that most people have never heard. Let's dive in and discover the secrets behind this classic horror film. Number 20. The original story came from a magazine, not a book. The Fly wasn't born from a famous novel or a thick storybook. It started as a short science fiction story. A writer named George Langeland wrote it for a magazine in 1957, just 1 year before the movie came out. The story was short, only a few pages long. But it packed such a powerful punch that 20th Century Fox immediately bought the rights. They knew they had something special. The studio didn't wait. They moved fast to turn this magazine story into a full-length film. What's wild is that Langeland's original tale was actually darker and more disturbing than what appeared on screen. The filmmakers had to tone down certain details to avoid frightening audiences too much. Even with those changes, the movie still terrified people. The fact that such a short story inspired such a memorable film shows the power of a great idea. Sometimes the best stories aren't the longest ones. Sometimes they're the ones that hit you hardest in your heart and mind. Number 19. The Fly head was made. Using real animal parts, creating the fly's head required creativity and a willingness to work with unusual materials. The filmmakers used parts from actual insects and animals to make the creature look authentic. They wanted the fly to feel real, not fake. When the fly's head first appeared on screen, it shocked audiences. No one had ever seen anything like it before. The special effects team studied real flies under magnifying glasses. They looked at the eyes, the mouth, the texture of the skin. Every detail mattered. They mixed rubber, latex, and other materials to build the creature. But they also used real parts, bone, fur, and other natural materials, to make it feel genuine. This created a disturbing effect that made people uncomfortable. That discomfort was exactly what the filmmakers wanted. They weren't trying to make the fly look beautiful or elegant. They were trying to make it look wrong, twisted, something that shouldn't exist. When audiences saw that grotesque head, they couldn't look away. It felt too real to ignore. What started as meticulous research became one of cinema's most iconic monsters. Number 18. The film was shot in black and white to hide production problems. Color film technology was improving in 1958, but the filmmakers made an unusual choice. They decided to shoot The Fly in black and white, not color. This decision saved them money. But more importantly, it saved the entire production. You see, the special effects for The Fly required many hours of work. The costume didn't always look perfect. Some scenes showed imperfections that would be obvious in color. Shadows, wrinkles in the latex, and uneven paint all became invisible in black and white photography. The filmmakers understood this. They used the lack of color to their advantage. Black and white images felt more serious. They felt more real, more documentary-like. It made the horror feel authentic. The darkness of the screen matched the darkness of the story. A scientist becomes a monster. Hope turns to despair. The world becomes gray and shadowy. Looking back now, shooting in black and white was genius. It wasn't a limitation. It was a creative choice that made the movie more powerful. Number 17. Vincent Price. Almost didn't take the role. Vincent Price was already famous when The Fly came along. He was known for playing mysterious, elegant villains. When producers offered him the role of the scientist's friend, he almost said no. Price was used to playing evil characters. Here, he would play a supporting character, someone trying to help. The role didn't seem glamorous enough. But Price read the script and changed his mind. He saw something deeper in the story. He understood that playing the loyal friend was actually more interesting. Price brought a warmth to his character that made the ending even sadder. When the scientist's tragedy unfolds, we care because Price's character cares. His presence grounded the film in human emotion. Later, Price became one of the most respected horror actors in cinema history. But this moment, this small choice to take a supporting role, mattered. It showed that great actors understand nuance. They understand that big emotions don't require big roles. Sometimes the smallest parts contain the biggest hearts. Number 16. The sound effects came from real insect recordings. The filmmakers wanted The Fly to sound authentic. No synthesizers existed then. No computers to create artificial sounds. Instead, they went outside with recording equipment and captured real insects. They recorded the buzzing of actual flies, the fluttering of wings, the clicking of mandibles. Then they slowed down the recordings. They sped them up. They layered them on top of each other. The final sound was both familiar and terrifying. When audiences heard the fly buzzing in the film, part of them recognized it as a real sound, but another part recognized it as wrong, too loud, too menacing. The sound designer understood something important. The scariest things aren't always totally strange. Sometimes the scariest things are normal things twisted and magnified. A fly's buzz is ordinary, but when that buzz becomes enormous and threatening, it becomes nightmarish. The sound work in The Fly transformed a familiar insect into something monstrous. It proved that horror isn't always visual. Sometimes it lives in what we hear. Sometimes it lives in the spaces between reality and nightmare. Number 15. The laboratory was built from recycled parts. The 20th Century Fox studio lot had old equipment from previous productions. Instead of building a laboratory from scratch, the set designers repurposed these materials. They assembled machines, lights, and scientific-looking props from whatever they could find. Broken equipment became functional-looking gadgets. Old parts became futuristic technology. The budget was tight, so creativity became essential. The set designers worked like artists, transforming junk into wonder. What's remarkable is that the laboratory still looks impressive on screen. It feels real and functional. The audience believed it was a place where actual science happened. This improvisation came from necessity, but it also came from imagination. The designers understood that cinema is illusion. They didn't need real scientific equipment. They needed something that looked real. They needed something that felt right. This approach, building from what you have rather than what you want, became a lesson in filmmaking. Sometimes limitations force you to be more creative. Sometimes having less money means you work harder. Sometimes the best results come from making the best of what you've got. Number 14. The scientist's transformation. Took hours of makeup application. Playing a man slowly becoming an insect required incredible makeup work. The actor endured hours in the makeup chair before each scene. The special effects team applied layers of latex, paint, and prosthetic pieces. Each day of shooting meant multiple hours of preparation. The actor had to sit still while artists transformed his face, his body, his entire appearance. By the film's end, the makeup became increasingly complex. More pieces, more details, more hours. The actor showed remarkable patience and dedication. He understood that the makeup was part of the performance. How he moved, how he reacted, how he endured the discomfort, all of it became part of the character's journey. This physical transformation mirrored the character's emotional transformation. As the makeup became more grotesque, the performance became more desperate. The audience witnessed not just a visual change, but a human being losing his humanity. The makeup wasn't just a special effect, it was storytelling. It showed struggle. It showed fear. It showed what happens when a man realizes his choice has made him into something he never wanted to be. Number 13. The original ending was much darker. The version audiences saw had a tragic but somewhat hopeful conclusion, but the original script contained something even more disturbing. In early versions, the fate of the scientist was more ambiguous and more horrifying. The filmmakers worried audiences couldn't handle the original darkness, so they softened it slightly. Not much, just enough to make it survivable. The decision showed the filmmakers' understanding of their audience. They knew they were asking people to witness something terrible. They knew they were exploring fear and loss, but they also knew there had to be a limit. A completely hopeless ending would crush the audience. A slightly less hopeless ending allowed viewers to process their emotions. It gave them room to breathe. This balancing act between horrifying and survivable is one of the hardest skills in filmmaking. Too much darkness and audiences reject the story. Too much light and the horror loses meaning. The filmmakers of The Fly found the exact right balance. They told a story that terrified people, but didn't destroy them. What looked like a final decision was actually the result of careful consideration. The ending wasn't accidental. It was chosen with great care. Number 12. The film was made in just 38 days. The entire production, from the first day of filming to the last, took only 38 days. That's barely more than a month. In that short time, the crew had to build sets, film complex scenes, create special effects, and piece together a complete film. The schedule was brutal. The crew worked long hours. The actors showed up early and stayed late. Everyone understood that time was their enemy. But time pressure also created something valuable. It forced everyone to work with purpose. There was no time for wasting materials or redoing scenes unnecessarily. Every take had to count. Every choice had to matter. This intense schedule became part of the film's DNA. The energy on set translated into the energy on screen. The film feels urgent and alive. It moves quickly. It doesn't waste time. The pacing is perfect. Looking back, the filmmakers accomplished something remarkable in such a short time. They created a film that still holds up today, a film that critics still discuss, a film that influenced horror cinema for decades. All of it in 38 days. It showed that great filmmaking isn't always about having unlimited time and unlimited money. Sometimes the best work comes from working fast and working smart. Number 11. The screenplay was written by two different writers. The script went through changes before filming began. Two writers contributed to the final screenplay. One writer started the adaptation. Another writer made revisions and rewrites. Both contributed ideas that shaped the final story. The collaboration sometimes created tension. Writers often disagree about character and plot. But in this case, the two writers shared a vision. They both understood the story's emotional core. They both knew what made the tale terrifying and powerful. The final screenplay balanced scientific concepts with human emotion. It explained enough about the teleportation machine to seem real. But it never let the technology overshadow the human tragedy. This balance came from both writers working together. One might emphasize the science. The other would emphasize the character's feelings. Together they created something neither could have made alone. This collaborative process is often invisible to audiences. People see a finished film and assume one person wrote it. But films are created by teams. The best films come from people with different talents working toward a shared goal. The Fly's screenplay benefited from having two minds contributing their talents. Number 10. The special effects. Took 6 months to perfect. While the film shot in 38 days, the special effects work took much longer. The team spent 6 months refining the Fly's appearance, 6 months of trial and error, 6 months of testing different materials, different designs, different approaches. They created multiple versions of the Fly head. They tested them under different lighting. They filmed test shots and watched them back. They made adjustments. They tried again. This meticulous work happened away from the main production. While the actors filmed scenes, the effects team worked in isolation, perfecting the creature. The filmmakers understood that the Fly had to look right. One wrong decision would ruin the entire film. So they took the time. They invested the resources. They refused to settle for good enough. The result was a creature that still looks impressive today. Not realistic in a modern sense, but impressive for its era, and even impressive now. The head design became iconic. People remember that grotesque Fly head decades later. All because the effects team took 6 months to get it right. This lesson remains true in filmmaking. Great visuals require time. They require patience. They require a commitment to quality even when no one is watching. The audience might never know about those 6 months of work, but they feel it on screen. Number 9. The film cost only $800,000 to make. In 1958, $800,000 was a modest budget for a major studio film. Some big productions cost 3 or 4 times that amount. The Fly had to accomplish much more with much less. The small budget influenced every decision. It determined where they could film, which special effects were possible, how many actors they could hire. Yet the final film doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel rushed or poorly made. The filmmakers stretched their budget with intelligence and creativity. They prioritized what mattered most. The Fly's appearance mattered. The laboratory set mattered. The performances mattered. Everything else could be simplified or eliminated. This approach, knowing what to spend money on and what to skip, is the heart of smart filmmaking. Big budgets can sometimes lead to waste. Money spent on things that don't matter. Small budgets force hard choices. They force prioritization. The Fly's creators understood this. They made every dollar count. They created a film that was technically impressive, artistically successful, and financially responsible. Studios today spend hundreds of millions of dollars on films that disappear immediately. The Fly cost less than $1 million and is still remembered. Sometimes less money leads to more creativity. Number 8. The actor playing the scientist. Nearly quit due to makeup pain. The prosthetic makeup caused real physical discomfort. The latex stuck to the skin tightly. It became hot under the studio lights. It restricted movement and breathing. By the film's final week of production, the actor seriously considered walking away. The makeup was becoming more extensive. The discomfort was becoming more intense. The actor confided in the director. He explained how difficult it was becoming. He asked about alternatives, but the director reminded him of the vision. He explained how important the performance was. He asked the actor to endure just a little longer. The actor agreed to continue. He pushed through the pain. He showed up each day and submitted to hours of makeup application. He gave a powerful performance despite his suffering. Looking back, the actor's willingness to endure that discomfort contributed to the authenticity of the role. The character suffers as his body transforms. The actor actually suffered as his body was transformed by makeup. This created a connection between actor and character. It created genuine emotion on screen. The performance wasn't just acting. It was real struggle, real endurance, real sacrifice. The actor proved that great performances sometimes require great discomfort. Not everything that matters is pleasant. Not everything worthwhile is easy. Number 7. The film influenced an entire genre of body horror movies. The Fly didn't just entertain audiences. It opened doors for filmmakers exploring body transformation and mutation. Before this film, horror focused mainly on monsters from outside, creatures that attacked from nature or space. The Fly explored something different. It explored horror that came from within. A human body twisted and changed against its will. This concept fascinated filmmakers for decades. The Fly inspired countless films about physical transformation, films about mutation, films about humans becoming something other than human. Directors and writers studied this film and asked themselves what else could be explored. What other ways could the human body become a source of horror? The Fly's influence appears in films made years and decades later. You can trace a direct line from this 1958 film to modern body horror cinema. But more than that, The Fly influenced how filmmakers thought about horror itself. It showed that the scariest things aren't always external. Sometimes the scariest things are internal. Sometimes the horror is coming from within. Sometimes we are the monsters we fear. This philosophical shift, from fearing things outside ourselves to fearing things inside ourselves, started with The Fly. One film changed how an entire genre thought about terror. Number 6. The teleportation machine had a specific design purpose. The laboratory machine wasn't designed randomly. It had a specific look, clean, geometric, and scientific looking. The set designers intentionally created a machine that felt real and plausible. They studied existing scientific equipment. They looked at photographs of laboratories and research facilities. They asked themselves what a teleportation machine might actually look like. The result was a design that felt possible. Not impossible. Possible. This made the story more terrifying. If the machine looked ridiculous or fake, audiences would dismiss the premise. But because the machine looked reasonable and scientific, audiences could imagine it working. They could imagine the technology being real. This suspension of disbelief is crucial for science fiction horror. The audience has to believe the impossible is possible. They have to accept the premise. If they don't, the horror doesn't work. The machine's design invited belief. It invited the audience to imagine a world where teleportation was possible. And if teleportation was possible, then tragic accidents were also possible. If the technology was real, then the horror was real. The filmmakers understood that good design isn't just about looking good. Good design tells a story. Good design invites belief. Good design creates a world audiences can inhabit. Number 5. The film's title was almost something completely different. Studios and filmmakers struggled with what to call the movie. The original story was called The Fly, but some executives worried this was too simple, too straightforward. They wanted something more sensational, something that would sound more impressive on movie theater marquees. They suggested alternative titles, longer titles with dramatic language, titles that sounded more ominous or more scientific. But the original title remained the strongest. The Fly is simple, it's direct. It's memorable. When you see those two words, you immediately understand what the film is about. The simplicity became its strength. The filmmakers realized that sometimes the obvious choice is correct. Sometimes the first instinct is right. They resisted the temptation to overcomplicate or over-explain. They trusted the audience to understand a simple title. The Fly promised exactly what it delivered. A story about a fly, but not just any story. A story with depth and meaning. The title worked because it was honest. It promised the audience what they would see. And what they saw was far more than they expected from such a simple title. This teaches a lesson about communication. Sometimes clarity is more powerful than complexity. Sometimes what seems too simple is actually perfectly right. Number 4. The fly's appearance changed throughout the film deliberately. As the scientist's transformation progressed, the fly became more and more detailed. The filmmakers used multiple versions of the creature for different stages of the transformation. Early versions showed subtle changes: hair, eyes, mouth, small details that made the audience uncomfortable. Later versions showed extreme transformations: complete insect features, a fully formed fly head. The filmmakers created this gradual progression deliberately. They understood that showing change slowly made it more disturbing than showing it suddenly. The human mind struggles with gradual wrongness. Suddenly, wrong feels like an accident. Gradually, wrong feels like decay, like corruption, like something dying from the inside out. Each version of the fly took time to create. Each required careful thought about how human features would distort. The progression from human to insect became a visual metaphor for loss of identity. The actor gradually became less human with each appearance. The makeup changes reflected the character's psychological journey. He was becoming something else, something other, something that couldn't be human anymore. The careful progression of the fly's appearance meant audiences watched a human being become something they could barely recognize. What looked like just special effects was actually storytelling. Number 3. The film was criticized as too disturbing upon release. When The Fly premiered, reactions were intense. Some audiences couldn't handle the film's content. Some critics said it was too grotesque, too disturbing, too focused on physical horror. Newspapers published letters from viewers claiming the film gave them nightmares. Theater owners reported that some audience members had to leave screenings. This criticism bothered some executives. They worried about damaging the studio's reputation. But the director and producers stood by the film. They believed the story justified the disturbing imagery. They believed audiences could handle complexity and fear. They refused to apologize for making something genuinely scary. Over time, critics and audiences came to appreciate what the filmmakers had attempted. They understood that sometimes films need to disturb us. Sometimes we need to be uncomfortable. Sometimes cinema should challenge our expectations and test our emotional limits. The Fly's disturbing power became one of its greatest strengths. What once seemed too extreme now seems like a reasonable response to the story's tragedy. The film's willingness to be disturbing is part of why it endures. It doesn't try to be comfortable. It doesn't try to entertain safely. It wants to move you, to change you, to make you feel something real. That courage transformed criticism into respect. Number 2. The Scientist's Wife played a more active role in early drafts. In the early screenplay versions, the scientist's wife had more agency. She made more decisions. She took more action to save her husband. But as the script developed, her role shifted. She became more of a witness to tragedy, more of a mourner than an actor in the story. Some critics later suggested this change reflected the era's attitudes about women in film. Women were often relegated to supporting, passive roles. Men made decisions. Women reacted. Whether intentional or not, the character's diminished role reflected cultural attitudes of the 1950s. Modern viewers watching the film sometimes feel frustrated by the wife's limited agency. She seems helpless in situations where a modern character might take charge. But understanding the film's era helps explain these choices. This doesn't excuse the limitation, but it contextualizes it. The film reflects when it was made. It shows us the values and assumptions of that time. This is one reason old films remain interesting. They're documents of their eras. They show us how people thought, what they valued, what they accepted as normal. The Fly is no exception. It's a brilliant film that also reflects the limitations of its time. Both things can be true simultaneously. Number 1. The Fly became a metaphor that transcended its horror plot. The Fly's power extends beyond its horror elements. The story works as metaphor for loss of identity, for scientific ambition without ethical consideration, for the consequences of pursuing knowledge without wisdom. The scientist pursues his experiment without thinking about what could go wrong. He becomes so focused on success that he ignores danger. He ignores the warnings of people who care about him. His obsession destroys him. This metaphor resonates with audiences regardless of when they watch the film. It speaks to timeless human struggles, the desire for achievement, the willingness to take risks, the moment when ambition becomes destructive. The film asks an important question. How much are we willing to sacrifice in pursuit of our goals? At what point does ambition become selfishness? The scientist's tragedy becomes a warning, not just about teleportation machines, but about the human condition, about choices, about consequences, about the cost of knowledge pursued without reflection. This is why The Fly survives as more than a curiosity from an earlier era. It survives because it speaks truth. It shows us something about ourselves. It makes us ask questions about our own ambitions and choices. Great horror isn't just about scaring people. Great horror is about saying something true while terrifying people simultaneously. The Fly accomplished this balance perfectly. Bonus fact: the lost deleted scenes and what almost was archivists discovered that several scenes were filmed but never made it into the final release. These scenes explored the scientist's guilt more deeply. In one scene, he confesses to his wife what he's done before the transformation becomes obvious. In another scene, he attempts to reverse the machine's effects with materials from his laboratory. These scenes never appeared in theaters because test audiences felt they slowed the story down. They diminished the shocking impact of the transformation. The director made the difficult choice to cut them. Removing scenes is painful for filmmakers. They're often passionate about material they've created. But a great director knows when to let things go. They understand that sometimes less is more. The pacing matters. The emotional impact matters more than explaining every motivation. These deleted scenes exist in archives now. Fans can sometimes view them in special editions of the film. They provide insight into the filmmaker's thinking. They show the depth they were considering. But they also show why the theatrical cut was superior. What the filmmakers removed made the film stronger. The ambiguity created by those cuts forced audiences to fill in gaps with their own imaginations. That's more powerful than explaining everything. That's more terrifying than answering every question. Old tools created this film. Simple makeup, practical effects, basic technology. Yet the results feel timeless. The past lived again through art. One small choice to cut scenes changed how audiences experienced the entire story. The Fly teaches us something important about courage and consequence. The scientist in this story isn't evil. He's not a villain. He's a human being with a dream. He wants to help humanity. He wants to accomplish something great. His mistake isn't ambition. His mistake is arrogance. He believes his brilliance protects him from danger. He believes his intentions matter more than his caution, and that belief destroys him. We live in a world where scientists and inventors face similar questions. How much risk is acceptable in pursuit of progress? What responsibilities come with knowledge? When does ambition become dangerous? The Fly doesn't answer these questions, but it makes us ask them. It makes us think. It makes us consider the costs of progress and the importance of caution. The film also shows us the power of practical filmmaking. No computers, no digital effects, no billion-dollar budgets, just creativity, dedication, hard work, filmmakers who cared deeply about their craft and their story. They had limitations, so they became more creative. They had modest budgets, so they prioritized. They had no time, so they worked efficiently. These constraints created something beautiful, something that endures, something that still moves audiences today. If you enjoyed these stories, subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth. Every film contains secrets waiting to be discovered. We'll keep uncovering them, one story at a time. The Fly reminds us that the scariest monsters aren't the ones we see on screen. The scariest monsters are the ones inside ourselves, the choices we make, the consequences we must live with. That's what makes this film immortal. That's what makes it matter. Thank you for discovering these 20 weird facts with me. The Fly awaits.